Our next office will be State Representative District 7. District 7. Our candidate, Proncey Robertson. Ernie Yarbrough. Mr. Moderator.
All right, gentlemen, I was in Montgomery, so don't try and pull the wool over my eyes. We're going to do this. First of all, thank you both. Representative, I know you're already down there, and you've been there for 4 years. Is that correct? This is your first term.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I was elected in 2018.
And Ernie, this is your first time to run, if I recall. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay, good. Is that microphone close enough? Can y'all go ahead and give it a test real quick? Can you?
Hello.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, y'all can hear that okay out there? All right, good. Well, gentlemen, I'll tell you right now, too, that I do know from personal experience that the legislature, my wife and I called it my full-time, part-time job. So it's allegedly a part-time gig. We know it's not. You're committing yourself to be on call to your constituents at any given time. So I'll start by saying that certainly appreciate the fact that you're both willing to put your names out there for a job that is underpaid, overworked, and on call 24/7. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
That being said, I do want to run through some questions. And I'm going to ask you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you both, who's my timekeeper, my timekeeper? Thank you so much. Oh, there she is. Okay. Are you going to yell at me? What are you going to do? You going to ring a bell? Okay. All right. And if I'm looking this way and don't see it, just yell at me anyway. That'd be fine. And y'all will hear your alarm when your time is up. So the way we're going to do this, I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to hope you stick with the question. You're going to have how long, ma'am? You're going to have roughly a minute. So that ain't much time to work with. Now, it's fair game when you have your 1 minute. If you feel like you need to reply to something or finish an answer you didn't get to finish before, that we can go down that road. But there are also going to be times when a question was asked, and if you don't answer it, that's an answer in itself, if you know what I mean. So that being said, I'm going to start with you, Representative, just to start. The next time I'll go to a question, I'll start over there. All right. So we're just going to kind of go back and forth, but it's the same question for both of you. First off, let me ask this: Alabama is dead last in education in the United States. Ranked 50th overall, ranked 52nd in math, which is hard to believe. There's only 50 states. We're ranked 52nd because we're behind Puerto Rico, I believe it is, and the Department of Defense schools overseas. That being said, in the last 4 years, there has been zero school choice, for the most part, legislation. Do you favor school choice? And if so, what kind? Representative, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate the question. Absolutely. We're having some, all of us are disappointed in how our school system is doing when you talk about those rankings, right, nationally. And there's a lot of, as you can imagine, conversation to talk about that. I sit on had the privilege of sitting on the Education Policy Committee in the House. And frankly, there hasn't been that many opportunities that have come up that have actually even progressed to our point, frankly, in the committee with school choice. This last year was probably the most aggressive attempt at it with a school choice bill. And while I am for school choice, okay, and I absolutely believe that that's the direction that we need to go. And what I mean by that is every parent should be making the decision about your children's school and their education as a base point. Absolutely agree with that. And I believe that we have every opportunity to do that if we work on that. At the same time, I don't see us destroying our public education system to get there. And so we've got to find the right balance to that. And you'll find that anything that I do out there, I try to take a balanced approach to. So I'm interested in any bill that's offered, and I'm going to take a close look at it and study that.
Ernie, you're running for the seat that's currently being held by Proncey. So that being said, same question. We're 50th in the nation. Doing the same old doesn't seem to be working. So with that regard, do you favor school choice, and if so, what kind?
Absolutely. And in fact, I feel like that so often there are institutions in Montgomery and nationally that actually mitigate against school choice because of a desire for power or control. And so I 100% support school choice. I think parents are the God-given protectors of their children. They have the right and the responsibility. And so I would love to see things like no strings attached tax credits to parents to make that school choice. I think that we also need to be willing to address why our schools are failing in that context of school choice, which is schools that are not promoting radical agendas, but are focusing on the traditional and successful methods of things like reading, writing, and arithmetic, and not pushing liberal agendas. So I think that school choice is a great principle, and we ought to live by it and make sure that we're promoting things in terms of school excellence that make all of our schools a good choice to choose from.
Thank you for that. And listen, I just got the hook from backstage. I walked in on the tail end of the candidate introductions earlier, thinking that y'all had already had a chance to introduce yourself to the crowd, and I'm told you were not part of that. So that being said, I just called your name and started asking questions, and y'all jumped right in, and I appreciate it. But let's do this. Let me go ahead. We're going to do, the way they've got it set up is let's go ahead and take a 1-minute introduction of yourself, and then you're going to have 2 minutes to close out your whole time at the end on your own. But I'll just start right here with you again, Representative Robertson.
Well, again, I'm Proncey Robertson. That is a real name, all right, so in case you've ever wondered. Old family name. I've been in the legislature for the last 4 years, but prior to that, I've spent my life as a public servant. For the last 35 years, I started out in the military, much like you, Senator. Spent my time there in Desert Storm, Desert Shield. When that was over, I was trying to decide what I wanted to do, what my next steps were, and that led me into law enforcement out in the state of Arkansas, where I was stationed at the time. Spent 3 years out there and then made my way, thankfully, back to the great state of Alabama, where I had the privilege to work as a police officer in the city of Decatur for 25 years. And during that time, I spent a lot of time, not just as a police officer, but being involved in my community, from everything from fundraisers with Special Olympics to the Republican Party. And I am proud to continue my service in Montgomery now, the opportunity I've had there for the last 4 years. So I know she's throwing the time up on me, but I can tell you all day that I've spent a lot of time in public service. I enjoy it, and I want to continue that. All
right, thank you. Ernie, you've also got the same thing. 1 minute, Ernie Yarbrough. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you. Married with 4 kids. My wife and I are both raised and homeschooled in Lawrence County. I grew up on a farm in a little town called Cleveland, or Challebeat to the locals. Moved into Moulton at 14. Worked on our farm, my dad's electrical business growing up. I was in 4-H, Boy Scouts, political campaigns, community service for the elderly, tornado relief, and played basketball for the East Lawrence Eagles, even though I was homeschooled. Tim Tebow. Taught pre-K through 4th grades, high school literature, and tutored math at Calhoun Community College Math Lab for 2 years. I'm a degreed electrical engineer from UAH and worked at Nucor Steel Decatur for 10 years. I now own my own software development company. My campaign slogan in that context is making Alabama local again, because I'm a small town guy who's been providing for my family, raising my kids, being involved in my community, and I'm running for this position because I believe that our local values, rights, and freedoms have to be preserved, and that the people of District 7 deserve to be truly heard and represented at home and in Montgomery.
All right, outstanding. All right, gentlemen, now that they know who you are, let me go to the next question on the list. In 2019, I believe it was, the legislature enacted the first gas tax since 1992 for the state of Alabama, a gas tax increase. Roughly 10 cents on every gallon that they're paying at the pump right now, the citizens have, comes from the new gas tax. Gas, of course, has shot through the roof. And we are in a different level of pain at the pump than we were when that tax was first put in place. That tax is also an escalating tax. It never stops going up. Every other year it has a chance to go up again should the formula work out. So that being said, in the current environment that we're in, as we stand here today, in the current economic environment that we're in, do you favor a suspension of the gas tax for a period of time in order to relieve the pain at the pump? Ernie, you're first this time.
The answer is yes, absolutely. Number one, because the way the gas tax was passed, I think a lot of Alabamians don't feel represented or heard. There's also the troublesome video that came out of our current governor speaking about that there was collaboration before people announced their candidacy for office in regards to agreeing for support. But in replacement, I think we could do some great things that are not taxes. We could level fund the budget. We could use the surplus to give Alabama citizens tax credits, pay off state debt, and decrease burdensome taxes and regulations on businesses. We could unify the budget to maximize efficient need and distribution of dollars. And we can use all that surplus plus a state auditor just to get back to the conservative principle that first and foremost, we have to be faithful with that which is little before we go on to much. So I do support that, and I think the people of Alabama do as well.
Thank you. Proncey, same question to you. Would you, in light of the current environment that we're in, be supportive of suspension of the gas tax for a period of time?
No. Locally, or right now, there is a drastic change. I understand that in the economy, and a lot of that's from our federal disaster that's going on with their energy resources that there should be tapping into and aren't. But I'll tell you specifically why I would say no, even to Colbert County here. When the gas tax was passed 3.5 some odd years ago, the county here, the county commission, leveraged that money, that extra 10 cents, to do a bond issue. Most of you probably know that. And borrowed some $3.5 million to do 50 projects here in the county of Colbert. If we were to suspend that, Senator, it would immediately put them in a bind with that local bond. I want to know how the county commissioner is going to pay that bond other than to draw it from your tax base some other way. So they owe that money, and they need to continue to pay it. I have other cities within my district that has done that. And that's happened all over the state. So to suspend it sounds like a great idea. But in the grand scheme of things, that 10 cents is making a tremendous impact on our economy and on our local citizens here. And so while I understand the situation and how people would like to see it come back, our job is to make wise decisions. And I'll continue to do that while I'm in this seat.
Okay, so the follow-up question, and I'll start with Ernie and come back to you again, Representative Robertson. The follow-up question of that is, Georgia just suspended their gas tax, Florida suspended their gas tax, Maine suspended their gas tax, Michigan suspended their gas tax, Minnesota suspended a portion of their gas tax. How are they doing it if it would not be the right thing to do for Alabama? Ernie, you're first.
Well, that's where it gets back to the fact that we have to ask ourselves, are we conservatives? Do we believe first and foremost in using principles of conservative economics and responsibility as our first line of defense? And so, again, I go back to, number one, we should level fund the budget. We've had record growth the last 4 years. Number two, we should use the surplus of the level funded budget to give Alabama citizens tax credits, pay off state debt, and decrease burdensome taxes. When you have more money in your pocket, businesses have less regulations and taxes to grow, then people can go and buy more product, better goods and services, more jobs, more sales taxes created. We have to find a way, first and foremost, number one, to make sure that the voice of the people is heard. Because you can come up with a million reasons for why money may or may not be needed, but we're representative government. Number two, we have to pursue healthy free market options first and foremost, and make sure we have an auditing going on so that, number one, our foundation is set, that we are using what we currently have and promoting healthy growth through free market principles. That's where I would start.
Proncey, your follow-up to the same question.
Well, number one, we're not in Florida, Georgia, Illinois, any of those other places. We're in Alabama. And in Alabama, constitutionally, the way the gas tax is put on the people is it's for the legislature to make that decision. I've heard a lot of people say the people should have voted on it. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with what Ernie's talking about how that as a basic concept and a principle and ideology of how we ought to handle that. But in Alabama, the gas tax pays for the roads. And we had a serious problem with the infrastructure and roads that was hindering a lot of our economic growth and other things. So let's forget about Georgia, Florida. Their economy is completely different based on their population and other demographics that's going on. I'm talking about what's happening in Alabama. and understanding, not just using these general philosophies, but understanding specifically what all those different tax bases that we have are designed for and where they're focused at. The gas tax is designed for the roads. And if you want to suspend it, let's talk about the loss in those roads and our infrastructure there and how it will impact that. Because that's what the difference is, how it's going to do.
She got you.
She got me.
She got you. All right. Gentlemen, new question. And I'll be starting over here with Representative Robertson. The 10th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States says that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited to it by the states are reserved to the states. Bottom line is the states' legislatures have a huge role to play, and sometimes that role is not just enacting what is good within their own borders, it's serving as a firewall to federal overreach. That being said, the vaccine mandates that came out last year, how do you see the role of the state legislature in responding to situations like vaccine mandates from Washington, D.C.? And I believe it's your turn to start first.
Well, obviously, I believe there was some tremendous overreach from the federal government in that situation. And as that happened, yes, we could enact laws that, but some of the things that were happening, and we did. We passed things to do with, made sure there wasn't a requirement for any kind of a vaccine passport, those sort of things. We focused on making sure that our workers had ability to waiver and get around some of these things. But to pass a law locally that ties us up in court it wasn't going to be timely to get done what we needed to. What we needed was an attorney general that stepped in, which they did, and began to fight those things in the court. And we've had success with that on pushback to the federal government. If they pass a law or these mandates that are overreach, then we work back through the legal system to push back against them. I understand there's some things the legislature can do, but if we're not careful, they just become like passing a resolution that's more talk than it is actual production. And so I believe that's how we focused in the state of Alabama, is to fight those things. And I believe our Attorney General and the Governor did a great job of pushing back against those. Thank you.
Ernie?
Medical freedom means the right of the individual to determine what goes in their body and on their body. The reality is that the vaccine passport law was basically useless because it had no penalty. And reports of violations have been many, including Dr. Valentine and Mobile. There was the possibility to support bills like HB 31 and SB 312, which would have given rights to individuals, medical workers, and doctors to fight back and to actually give a threat of suits and so forth. And so those were not properly supported, and therefore they weren't passed. Bills like SB 255, we need to actually have the state legislature be able to approve our state health officers' decisions. And so I am a strong believer in telling the federal government that there are times when leaders have to pick a fight and have to stand in the gap. And there was legislation that would have given the people the right to sue and fight back, and that wasn't supported. So I strongly believe in telling the federal government the answer is no.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. I'm going to kind of stay in that vein, but I'm going to chase a rabbit for a minute in this kind of topic. In terms of the state legislature having the opportunity to address issues, not just COVID and vaccine mandates and things like that, but for that matter, any issues. For the benefit of the audience, the state legislature comes into session once a year. We call it the regular session. It's early in the year, somewhere typically starting in January, February, ending in the early spring. Once every 4 years, they do an organizational session purely for the purpose of selecting committee chairmanships and all that kind of thing. Those are the only times by law they can just show up on a schedule. Beyond that, the only time that the legislature can convene to enact laws is if the governor calls them into a special session. The governor has to actually call, and the governor sets what is known as the call. The governor issues a proclamation and says, I call the legislature in for this purpose. All right. In the spirit of discussing having co-equal branches of government, recognizing that the legislature can't convene to address the issues of its constituents outside of regular session unless the governor calls first, the separate branch of government, the executive branch, calls the legislative in. Would you or would you not support authorizing the legislature, by passing a law to say so, to call itself into special session when it deems necessary and not have to wait on the governor. And I believe I'm starting with who first this time? I think I'm starting with Ernie first.
The answer is 100% yes. This goes back to history. England, Oliver Cromwell, the king could go in and dissolve Parliament. And Parliament said, you know, this is really a bad deal. If we're supposed to be of, by, and for the people, we have to be able to not be dependent upon the king to call ourselves into session and out of session, as it may be. And so it is absolutely essential, I believe, that the legislative body be empowered and enabled through legislation to call themselves into session. I certainly have always believed that, but I think we all know the last 4 years we have seen the absolute necessity of our representative body to call itself into session to deal with the issues of our rights and our freedoms and the crises that are before us, because those are the people that we've elected, and they need to have the freedom to call themselves into session to represent us under any and every circumstance.
Representative Robertson.
Yes, sir. I do believe that it, especially with the, there were some unanticipated things, to say the least, and some unprecedented situation that we were dealing with this pandemic. And there was a lot of frustration among the legislature down there that we did not have the ability to call ourselves back in and deal with some things. That power constitutionally now is left up to the governor. I'm not opposed at all to us making a proposal to the people to change that in our Constitution. If we need to do that, let's talk about it. So absolutely, it would have been useful in this situation. But again, if we need to do that, we'll certainly look at it. There was a lot of things during this pandemic that were new to everyone. Some of the issues came up, even I know my opponent mentioned HB 31. In my opinion, HB 31 was nothing more than another government overreach into private property rights. You as a private business owner not being able to make decisions about what you do with your business. So they didn't want any government intrusion about individual rights, but you at the same time want us to intrude upon the business rights. So there's a lot of ways to look at this. There's other details you have to look at in every situation and how it actually affects us based on how the Constitution of Alabama is written in any particular given situation. Thank you, Senator. I apologize for the time.
Speaking of the Constitution of Alabama, the longest constitution in the world.
Yes.
Literally, in case you didn't know that, we have the longest constitution in the world because we keep adding to it.
About 1,000 amendments, right?
At least. But that being said, my recollection is that the legislature comes into regular session, the only constitutionally mandated duty it has is to pass the budgets. This year, the legislature passed the largest budgets, I believe, in the history of the state of Alabama. We are one of only 3 states in the nation that has split budgeting. Everything, education is in one budget. Everything else it takes to run the state, whether it be mental health or state troopers or court systems or anything else, all that is in the other budget called the general fund. I'm saying this as much for the audience as anything.
Right.
But all that to say, the ability to appropriate funds in a split budgeting system is very limited because they are earmarked. They are earmarked just to that budget or just to that budget. Would you be in favor of combining the state budgets into one as 47 other states do? And I believe you're starting first this time.
I've heard a lot of talk about that over time, as you can imagine. Being in Montgomery, it always is a subject that comes up, Senator. I'm not opposed to that concept, but someone would bring a proposal to talk about that, okay? I think they're separated for some very specific reasons, primarily of how the tax base is set up in the state of Alabama. Of where your taxes come in and where they go is split between those two budgets. And so there is some reasons that those things are done that would take us more than a minute here to talk about probably. But you're absolutely right that there's some better than 90% of our budget is already earmarked. A lot of that's set by constitutional amendment and things that you as the people voted on and said, this is where we want that money to go to. You didn't give the power to the legislature to move it around. The other 8% is what you really see us dealing with down in Montgomery. So not opposed to that idea, but yes, there are 2 budgets right now. Yes, they are bigger than ever. In my opinion, this last year, it's for 2 reasons. One, all the additional monies and income that came in related to the pandemic. And 2, the economy's booming in the state of Alabama. things are moving in the right direction because of the conservative leadership you've had for the last decade. Thank you.
Absolutely. Ernie.
I'm going to go back and address one comment about HB 31. I would make the argument that that actually is not an invasion of private businesses, because businesses, I grew up small business, and I've lived in business and industry my whole life. But businesses cannot do whatever they want. They can't say, well, you're black or white, we're not going to serve you. Businesses have to honor the Constitution. And so that includes honoring your right to your life, liberty, and property in your body. So it just required them to honor our Constitution. As far as combining the budget, absolutely. I think we need to do all that we can to maximize the ability to redistribute our economics and our monies where they can be most efficiently needed and used. And since it is booming, we should maybe repeal some taxes and give the people relief, as well as get regulations off of businesses so that they can boom as well and we can grow with a unified budget. So I do agree with that.
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen, as we're coming down to the end of our time, sorry? Thank you very much. Does that include their 2-minute time each at the end? Okay. All right, I'm going to ask you one quick question. I'm going to ask you one quick question and ask that you not take more than about 30 seconds with it, or I'll get run off the stage by the timekeeper. I believe I'm starting with Ernie this time. If you're headed down, it's hard to get a chairmanship in the House because there's 105 House members and there ain't that many committees. If you had the opportunity to chair a committee, which one would it be?
Boy, that's a good question. Probably something in relationship to business. So I don't know all the names of all the different committees,
okay.
But my heart and passion is with business, small business, and so something in relationship to growing economies and jobs through using healthy and conservative means of economics would be my passion, probably.
Outstanding. Representative Robertson, if you have the opportunity to chair any committee, what would it be?
Of course, the Speaker of the House makes those appointments, as you know. And a lot of times those are based upon your background, your experience, your knowledge, and a lot of different things. I've been on the Education Policy Committee, Public Safety, Homeland Security Committee, and the agencies, boards, and commissions. Each of those I've learned a lot from, but I think if I had the chance just to say you chair the one you want, it'd be Public Safety and Homeland Security. Just because of my background from military to policing to, some of the things the ladies were up here talking about with the court system, I was as familiar with probably as you are, because I've sat in the courtroom as many times as many attorneys have. And so I understand a lot of that. I've enjoyed my work on the Public Safety Committee. I think we do some great things there, and that would be my choice.
All right. Gentlemen, what we're going to do right now is give you each 2 minutes to just say whatever you want to say within the bounds of reason. But you've got 2 minutes, and I believe, since I just started the last question with Ernie, I'm starting with Representative Robertson.
Well, I just want to thank the people of Colbert County for giving me the opportunity to serve as your representative. And even though my district hasn't reached into this area before, I have enjoyed getting to know you. And we're regional now as far as the things we do as the House of Representatives. We cross lines a whole lot. And I am not an isolationist. Understand this. I'm about reaching across lines in our jurisdictions, from cities to counties to the state. And I believe we need to be pulling partners in to work together on so many things. I don't believe we need to box ourselves in anywhere and isolate ourselves, close down on our own little kingdoms. I believe that there is huge things going on in the state of Alabama right now. We're booming in the economy. North Alabama is one of those key spots. And I believe Colbert, Lawrence, and my little piece of Morgan County need to be a part of that. And I'm going to do my part to make sure that you've got the right connections in Montgomery to make sure that we get it done here locally. We can't do that by hiding on our own property. So let's start expanding our horizons. Let's grow the economy here. Let's grow more jobs. Let's work on our public education, those problems you're talking about. But it's a team effort. And I want to be your teammate in Montgomery. And if you'll allow me to go to Montgomery and serve, I will do you a good job. I have for the last 4 years. I've been consistent to openly and honestly deal with anyone. You ask me a question, I'll tell you the truth. You may not like the answer, but I'm going to give you the truth. You can count on that. And I will always do what's in the best interest of this county and the county that I live in Lawrence, and the little piece of Morgan that I have. I have great respect for all of you and your authority as the voters, and I would love for you to send me back to be your representative. I promise you I'll never embarrass you.
Thank you, Representative Robertson. Appreciate that very much. Ernie Yarbrough, 2 minutes.
Thank you. I hope tonight you've come away with the knowledge that I want to grow our communities, jobs, economy, and education and give them a vibrant future. I'm not an isolationist either. But as a conservative, I believe that there are principles by which we have to operate as we grow. And vibrant because we pursue sound, time-tested, truly conservative solutions that at the same time are built on and preserve our faith, values, rights, freedoms, and liberties. So tonight, and the election upcoming, is in that context about a choice, right? Our nation is in peril. And what the voter base of the Republican Party is learning is this, so we have to pursue a healthy economy and strong education, but it matters who funds campaigns. It matters how leaders vote for all 4 years. It matters what legislation they have drafted all 4 years. It matters what they raise a fuss about and when they raise a fuss and what bills they support, like medical freedom and ending mask mandates for children. And it matters if they act like conservatives only around primary elections or if they favor life and liberty their entire 4 years. Having 90% or more of your campaign funded by special interests and PACs matters. Drafting liberal gun amendments and gun database legislation matters. Supporting bills that preserve medical workers and all Alabamians' freedoms from vaccine mandates and doctors' rights to prescribe what they see fit to treat things like COVID matters. Having lifetime failing scores by the American Conservative Union matters. Representatives have a choice who will fund their campaigns. They choose who they listen to and who they make feel heard, valued, and voted for. And the people have a choice on May 24th, much like our football here in Alabama. So as I close out, you know, signing day, they do hats, right? So one choice that you have on May 24th is you can choose government overreach. You can choose special interests. You can choose higher taxes. You can choose gun databases. You can choose Montgomery insiders. Or you can choose, like me, to protect the precious lambs of our children and our faith and our freedoms and join the team of lions and not sheep to defend our freedoms and grow our nation and our state in a healthy but conservative way. Thank you.